يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا يا هلا يا هلا يا هلا يا هلا يا هلا يا
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. Welcome to the program. It is the first day of Ramadan. Alhamdulillah. I can't stop making shukr for the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with another Mubarak month of Ramadan with our loved ones. It is the first day of Ramadan, and our du'as is that inshallah the rest of Ramadan goes by with lots of spirituality, rizq, barakah, love, peace, mercy, and all the good things that you can think of and wish for your loved ones, inshallah. Welcome to the program. We do hope you're going to keep us company for the next 2 hours. I have 3 amazing women lined up for you to talk about different aspects of life. We're going to start off by talking to Masouda Japi. She runs a home school. She did a kiddies program on CII for several years, and she's here to talk to us about how to make a Ramadan special for your children. We're also going to be talking to Shanaz Bulbulia. She's a journalist, she's a trainer, and she's also a writer. She's going to share her story with us. And we wrap up by talking to Zahira Walker, the author of 2 books. And we're going to find out what is it that motivated her to write the books and what the books are about. So all of that on this first day of Ramadan, inshallah. We do hope you'll become a part of the conversation on our open lines. But now this first part is for the kiddies. We do hope they're all up and about and possibly even watching, and we hope that after the interview they're going to get you more involved as far as making Ramadan very, very special for them. So let's welcome Masouda Japi to the show. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. It's so great to be back.
Always a pleasure.
Alhamdulillah.
I mean, we're colleagues, ex-colleagues, so to speak, and always lovely working with you. Masouda, I know that you have a little girl, and I also know that you run your own home school, so you're really involved with children, children's needs, one's desires, and know that what makes them tick. Ramadan is a very special month in the lives of Muslims. What is it that we ought to be doing to make this special for our children and for them to understand the concept of spirituality, which is what Ramadan is all about?
I think preparation starts way before the month of Ramadan, because it's instilling them within them the idea that the month of Ramadan is coming. We're going to be fasting from this particular time till that time, and the concept that this is only for Allah. So it has to be done before, and even if it hasn't been done, there's still time. So we can start speaking to them. That's the one thing that they need us to do. Sit down and explain to them why are we fasting. And this is the thing. When they are that age, they're sponges, so they grasp everything you say. They'll remember what you said 2 weeks ago, even 2 years ago for that matter. So it's important what you tell them is what you stand by, and as a Muslim, what it actually involves. So explain to them that this is a time where we give up eating and drinking only to please Allah. And Allah's our reward for this. And explain to them that you need to feel what it feels like those who do not have. What do they go through?
And at the same time, point out how blessed we are.
Of course.
How much Allah has blessed us with so much of rizq and barakah. And that is why we've got to share what we have.
Oh, yes. And I think the one thing that they're also very excited about is the idea and the concept that shaitan is locked up for an entire month. So shaitan is not troubling us, and this is the one thing that gets them so excited. So I said, now we can do even extra good deeds, and the amount of reward that you get for performing even a nafil act, that you get the reward of performing a fard, and that everything that you do during this month is multiplied by 70. So the concept and the idea that it is so fulfilling and rewarding for you to do anything is something that they need to be exposed to. And there's so many ways in which we can actually bring that about depending on the ages.
So talk to us about some examples.
All right, so I have a 7-year-old, and alhamdulillah, this is her second Ramadan. Last year was mainly, she did fast most of her fast half a days and then some of them full days. So this year she's intending, and she says she wants to fast a full day for every day.
Inshallah.
So inshallah. So there needs to be some sort of incentive. So, and that feeling, that excitement that has to come. So what I had done differently this year was I had given her a special gift, which was her own musalla that she could choose that's the color that she wanted, a burqa that matches, a tasbih that is hers, so everything that belongs to her. So now she has everything that she needs. There was a few kitabs that she decided it's hers, so she's going to be putting it in with her things, so that she has now a special spot to pray. And alhamdulillah, this has made me feel like, you've achieved something, because now she wants to. So the time for Maghrib kicks in and she says, okay, let's go. So subhanallah, so that's one aspect of it. And then there's the arts and crafts part of it. Get them involved. We don't want them to be sitting and playing Xbox and PlayStation, or, watching YouTube videos or Netflix or whatever the case may be. Let's take them away from that. Give them a different option. So there are Islamic videos, there's activities and crafts, and ITV itself. There's lots of different things that a child can be exposed to that's not going to lead them basically to sin. So in that sense, get them involved in crafts. Make them make Ramadan boxes, for that matter, and give it to those whom they love. So put dates, sweets, something that they would want to put inside their handmade cards. Go give it to all the neighbors that says Ramadan Kareem and Ramadan Mubarak, so that they know that we need to invite everybody and make everybody feel like they're part of this huge big family.
Now, you obviously homeschooling, you run a homeschool,
yes,
and you've got different age, the children are of different ages. How do you, how do you try and get a similar message across the different age groups? Because it might be a bit above the capacity of maybe a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old as compared to your 10-year-old, 12-year-old kids.
So what we have to note that right now, most schools are going to be starting off with their June exams. So there's not much time for us to be able to inculcate anything, for that matter, in our time of our day. So what we've done differently this year in comparison to most schools, because all of them, I think, at the end of at 12, it's exams, so the kids are allowed to go home. So we're continuing on with our day till 2 o'clock. And from about 12 to 2, part of that time is going to be allocated to our Ramadan camp, which is going to have different crafts for the smaller grades. So they're going to be making their own Ramadan tree. So this is going to keep track of every fast that they've kept. And they get to collate in, and it gets to stay at school. So for every day that they fasted, they have to collate in. There's a salat tracker. So they have these activities where they have to tick off, okay, I perform my fajr, I perform my dhuhr, I perform my asr, like those kind of things, just to encourage them, so they're doing little things here and there. They're making Ramadan boxes. This is for the smaller grades. For the bigger ones, I'm getting them more involved in actually presenting to a hadith or a story from the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or from the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. And they have to present it to the entire class. So you choose something that you love, that has really stood out to you, and you present it. And every child, so we have about 3 different children who's going to do that per day, and I will present something myself, and we get them involved in different activities. So there's lots of things that they want to do. So we want to do this, we want to go out and we want to go to an orphanage, for instance. So there's lots of things that we try to inculcate within the classroom by means of getting them involved, getting the right people involved, so we can expose them to these type of things. So depending on the age, there's even
all related to Ramadan.
All related
for example,
to Ramadan.
going to an orphanage and going out to give hampers, for example. Mm-hmm. So you sent it around a lesson pertaining to Ramadan.
Yes, and there's lots of lessons from the Quran as well, and the Sunnah. So we try to inculcate that in our daily basis, in our daily program, at school. And what we tend to do is we get them involved in our external autonomous distribution. So under our bracket of our school, we have a different branch that does the distribution in El Dorado Park. So what we do is we take our students, we tend to support 120 families there. So every week we'd go out and there's halim distribution and bread and vegetables, as well as food hampers as well, which tomorrow is our major one. So we get them involved in coming to be able to see what it's like, get them physically involved to pack out and hand off, and just to get in touch with the people that are there so they can actually see what's going on.
And the concept of giving and sharing,
of course, it's very important.
Which obviously we as Muslims have to live throughout our lives.
Yes.
Now, having said that, you're a teacher, and this is easy for you. It's easy for you to come up with these amazing concepts and impart the knowledge to the learners. What do moms at home, what sort of advice can you give them to do interesting and exciting things to share with children in Ramadan?
So my focus is two, right? So we're looking at the stay-at-home mom and the working mom. So I'm going to talk about the working mom. Sometimes we feel like we don't have enough time. We rush home from work, it's iftar, it's, getting them ready and tarawih, and then that's it. They go into bed or whatever the case may be, and you be too exhausted to do much. There is hope, I promise you. The internet has so much to be able to give us. Google search Ramadan crafts and Ramadan activities, and there's so much to print off. Now, there's a recent one that I've been sending around to everyone. It's just Ramadan journal. Subhanallah, it's amazing. So it keeps the kids busy because it makes them write down whatever they've done for the day and keeps track of what they want to do and their goals and things like that. And the kids absolutely love it. So this is one thing that you could probably print off and have it for them. There's other activities that they can do as well. Get them involved in the kitchen. Think back to what you loved about Ramadan. And this might take us, walking down memory lane and thinking what it was like with our parents.
And also share those stories
and
with
share
them.
it with them. They want to hear it. They're so into wanting to know what our parents did with us and what were we like when we were kids. And make them get involved in those similar things. So if it was you preparing a whole lot of savories and things to send to the masjid, get your children involved in doing the exact same thing. My fondest memories are, rushing because I needed to make my dad's tea and making sure the milk was done and the savories were ready so that it could be sent off to the masjid. And being the imam's daughter, I got to run quickly in and go give it. Subhanallah, it was so different back then, which obviously tends to think, okay, it's not the same now. People are not exactly the same. We don't get to go and give savories to our neighbors. Like we could go walk around with a plate. Our
lifestyles have changed.
It's completely changed. But why should it? Why can't we go to our neighbor and send them a plate over? Because it's a spirit of giving and love and sharing and inculcating that sense of brotherhood, which the children need to see. Have a huge Ramadan chart on the wall for all your kids so they can put down what they've learned. The one thing that I've started is my 99 Names of Allah tree. So I've actually taken cardboard and I've made the branches of the tree and the bark of the tree. And every day, inshallah, we're going to be putting at least about 5 or 6, depending on how we're dividing it up, names of Allah and what it means to us. And how do we relate to that particular name and what do we understand about Allah? So learn Allah or get to know Allah through that. So utilize
Beautiful
the time.
concept, mashallah.
SubhanAllah. Utilize the time after supper. So, once the men come back from the masjid and we've eaten supper, talk about it. Get them involved. Say something. Let the kids say something and teach them at that particular point and have it close by so it's not like you need to go and walk very far to go and put up the names, get the kids to do it themselves, make them make the leaves, those kind of things, and then for the mom who's at home, there's so much more crafts and things that they can actually get involved with. Get the kids to make their own iftar. Get the kids to be able to make something that they want to do, I think then you have the time, so you can make them paint, take them to different places so they can see, even historically about where we are in South Africa as Muslims, there's so much for us to be able to learn from our community. Take them to places. Let them see, okay, this is what his life is like in different parts of just Johannesburg for that matter. Subhanallah. And then after that, ask them what have they learned. So if you're driving past somewhere where, for example, there are shacks, what do you think their life is like? Make them keep their own diaries. Get them involved in the things that you like to do. So you're rushing for iftar. Get them in the kitchen. Okay, you're going to make the milk for me. This is how you do it. And this is your special job for the whole month of Ramadan. This is what I need you to do. You're going to make sure the oven is on. So you get them involved in what you are doing, not just pushing them out of the kitchen. Okay, go play on your iPad. Go play on your tablet. Whatever the case may be, we tend to shut them out because we're trying to rush. Mm-hmm. If we get them involved in everything that we're doing, they're going to love it even more because they get to spend time with you. And they get to feel the spirit of Ramadan, this love and this care and this month of mercy. And how, I think, the brightness that it brings about within the home, subhanAllah, is something that you tend to miss if there isn't children in the home.
All right. Masuna Japi is our first guest. We're talking about how to make Ramadan special for the kids in our lives, the children in our lives, those special lights in our lives. If you'd like to become a part of the conversation, do call us on the open line, but first an ad break. Alhamdulillah, the first day of Ramadan, a beautiful and Mubarak day, and so good to be with you on this first day of Ramadan. No doubt it is a Saturday, which means most families are at home. You're going to start off the month on a spiritual high and also get the kids involved and do everything you possibly can to make them realize just how special the month is, the month of Ramadan, and how special it is to be sharing it with loved ones. Masuda Japi is my guest, and we're talking about how to make Ramadan even more special for the special people in our lives, and that is our kids. You know, Masuda, my son and I were talking at Suhoor this morning, and he really said something which made so much of sense. He said, Mom, when there aren't any children in a home, Ramadan is very special. It's a Mubarak month. It's a month of auspiciousness. But somehow or the other, it is more special when there are children in the home. Would you agree with that concept, and why?
Completely. I love it. I absolutely love it. Because we do a bit more. We take the effort a bit more. We take it to another level with the kids around, you know. We would ensure that the food is exciting, you know. And besides that, they have their own nur that they bring home with them, and that excitement because they are so excited. So it tends to just make us feel rejuvenated, subhanallah. So I love that. I really do.
And we know that we need to be the leaders. We need to set the example. And if we don't set the right examples, our children are going to be that much more poorer for it.
Definitely. I think we live in such a fast-paced world at this moment in time. Everything is instant gratification. At the same time, everything that we do is so self-centered. And we forget that they're around us. So we would be wanting to perform our salah and we'd ignore them because we're so focused on ourselves. So spirituality is something that the entire family needs to be together with. So this is where you incorporate, and we can start. I don't think it's ever too late. And if alhamdulillah, if you're doing it, subhanallah, you could always, you know, share with us with regards to what you guys are doing that's different from what we do. We tend to, everybody gets together, we perform salah together. So you encourage that type of spirituality together.
And it is said that a family who prays together stays together.
I completely agree. But you need to teach them how to do things,
absolutely.
you know. Otherwise, who's going to teach them? They're going to go throughout the world, and to a certain extent, teachers can only go to a certain point. We can't teach past a certain point. So what you're doing in school is all that you're going to learn with me. And then when you go home, you might take some of that and do it. But what is left in the home and what the parents do is really so important, so that they can also feel, okay, it's the month of the Quran, it's that month of mercy. I need to feel it. I can see it. Everything is changing, subhanallah, which is great.
What happens when you do have little children who, depending, it's also age appropriate, maybe even with older children, that for some reason maybe they're sick, or by mistake they've broken their fast, or they're just way too hungry, they just can't upkeep the fast for that day, but they feel very guilty and very bad about it. As a teacher and a mother, how do you deal with a situation like that?
Okay, so there's many ways in which we can deal with it. I feel that guilt makes them feel it's a punishment to fast.
And bad, they feel bad.
Yeah, they feel that fasting itself is a punishment. So we should never make them feel guilty that has happened, because sometimes it just happens by mistake. So my little one saw the water cooler and she goes instinctively for it because that's the thing that she loves. And you remind them, like, you're fasting today, it's a full day. Okay. And they feel like, they feel this need that they want to break their fast, or they just can't, then it's okay. At the end of the day, remind them, hold them, tell them Allah loves them irrespective. And sometimes we just can't manage, because at the end of the day, when you are so sick, fasting is not compulsory upon you. Obviously, there are rules in place for that, but teach them that it's okay and you can always make it up afterwards. But it has to be a valid reason. And I think obviously age appropriate. If it's a 6-year-old, comfort them and say, okay, look, maybe if you can't manage, we can have something now and fast the rest of the day until iftar. So you encourage them to be able to keep their fast afterwards. If it was just a mistake and they eaten something, which happened a few times, I think to everyone, we all have our own stories about where we'd probably eaten something, and the moment afterwards that guilt set in, but you feel that I have to finish it for Allah, and you get those who think, okay, if I'm gonna have something now, I can just not eat the whole day. So you encourage them that, look, even if you made a mistake, continue on. Allah loves that action because you're doing it for Him.
And you've made an effort. The important thing is
the effort
that you
that's
have
there.
tried, you've made your
Yes.
niyat, and Allah will accept, even if it's a couple of hours.
And I feel maybe if the guilt has set in to the point where these children are so upset and they can't handle it, ask them to write down a letter. And if they feel like they can't, make dua because they don't know how to be able to say to Allah, ask them to write it and explain why they're so sorry. Oh Allah, I didn't mean to be able to break my fast.
so
like those
sweet.
things, and then those little things I feel, and then you can always keep them and put them in a treasure box and like a memory box for them later on to say, this is what you wrote when you were 6 years old, which for a mother, I think that's great. I love having memory boxes and things like that. But at the same time, instill with them the understanding that our days are very short and make them see, especially if a child it's nearing like an hour for iftar. Now you can't make your child break their fast, unless obviously a dire situation where the child is really sick. But try to encourage them, hold them. My father used to rock us and make dhikr so that we would maybe just be lulled with that, just his presence alone, because they need us at that point to show them that that's comfort, that love, that Allah loves us, so we need to love each other, so that we just to be with each other for that last hour. And inshallah, it's a short day. May Allah make it easy for all the kids who are fasting, inshallah, because it might feel short to us because we're not fasting over 20 hours, but that 12 hours, it tends to get to them sometimes. But keep them busy, keep them occupied. Don't let them stray to the television and see all the adverts with regards to everything, because that and the food makes them so hungry. Avoid those kind of conversations. We've actually made it taboo to speak about any food during the month of Ramadan at school, which the kids are like, we can't even tell you what we had for iftar. I'm like, no.
Because it's going to make you hungry.
It's going to make the smaller kids hungry.
Okay, let's touch on, we're going to get in the show on a note of spirituality. What is it that we get the spiritual levels up with children and the importance of that? Because it's not, and I think a lot of the children seem to think that it's all about food and abstaining from food, and it's way more than that.
Of course.
How do we get that very important concept across to them? But it's exam time around the corner. What do we as parents and teachers do to help them maintain energy levels and concentration levels whilst fasting and writing exams?
So I would have encouraged teachers already, maybe 3-4 weeks already ago, to have already started the kids on studying. So by the time it comes around to Ramadan, that it's not so much. But maybe there's a week still left. So what I would suggest, even the moms at home and the dads, encourage them to stay up after Sahri. Let them stay after Sahri and study at that particular point, because your energy levels are high, your concentration levels are excellent at that particular point. Let there be some fresh air, so let some fresh air circulate. Even if it's a bit cold, allow that fresh air to hit you in the morning. It rejuvenates you, subhanAllah. And sit and study for at least about an hour and a half, and take a bit of a break. Lie down, obviously after you perform your salah and things like that, so that point their minds are fresh, because there's no really much time rest for the rest of the day. Maybe in the afternoon, take a nap, when you come home from school, qaylullah, have that sunnah nap, and then get up and then study again. And at the same time, remember, there has to be a balance between your studies and the Quran. So obviously looking at the bigger children, tell them, okay, you're studying for 20 minutes, you're going to read Quran for 20 minutes. And try to be able to make that balance so that they understand that, look, I have to study, yes, but I know this, I've learned this, my teacher has drilled this in my head, and I'm sure I'm going to pass this. And with a positive attitude, inshallah, even studying becomes easier. And almonds is brilliant because it promotes the memory, subhanallah, it increases your memory. Read all
the badam milk does the trick.
Yes, it does, it really works. And you could do that in the morning for Sahri, and in the evening as well. So it's going to open their mind and their heart, inshallah, because after Tarawih, they need to go to bed early. Don't let them stay up, because the earlier they wake up for Sahri, the better it is, because the more time they'll have to study. So as a teacher, I'm going to say, look, the exams are not so difficult. If you've covered your content, if you've done the work, the kids know their work.
And revision.
Yeah, and the kids know their work. The kids are really good. I promise you. They're just lazy.
Alhamdulillah.
They're just lazy. And that's my personal opinion when it comes to exams and they flunk out. It's just them being a bit lazy. But I think if you have a routine, which is so important, as a mother and a father, you need to be able to instill that routine. Wake up for Sahri, study, and stay up with them. don't go back to bed, because they're not going to be studying if you're going to bed.
Yeah.
So those small little things, I know it's a bit of a sacrifice.
Those examples are important.
Sacrifice on our part.
All right, let's talk about, it's the first day of Ramadan, and for children, I mean, we know as adults that this month will fly by in a blink of an eye. Before you know it, Ramadan will be over. But for children, it seems like the month is going to go on forever. It seems like absolute ages. How do we make it sustainable for them and to bring in the spirit, the whole spirit of a taqwa for children, and how do we get that concept across to them?
So spirituality and having the taqwa and yaqeen in Allah is so important from a young age. We need to instill that there. So, and being the month of the Quran, we need to ensure that they understand that it's the month of the Quran. So and
share those Quranic stories with them, how the Quran was revealed.
Of course, not just sharing how the Quran was revealed, but take a look at the surah that they are learning at the moment in time. So whether it's Surah Al-Nas, Surah Al-Falaq, explain to them the meaning. Surah Al-Lahab, Surah Al-Ikhlas. Talk to them about
why it was revealed.
Why it was revealed.
There's so many opportunities.
The story behind the revelation. And it's a good thing for us because it obviously helps us with our research. But at the same time, imagine your child's face lights up because now they're going to go to school tomorrow. And they're going to tell their teacher and their friends everything that mommy and daddy has taught them about the Quran. So you are now obviously instilling something that's going to stay with this child forever about the Quran. Make them love it because it's not just words. And teach them that this is not just words. It means something, and it means something to us, and we follow the Quran and we follow the Sunnah. So make them understand this. And so you start off small at the younger ages, right? So once they're between, say, from 10 years old to about 12, I think they at a much better understanding where you can touch on the bigger surah and you can touch on the bigger understanding of the tafsir. And then from 13, 14, you can really go in depth with them, and but make it interactive. They want it to be interactive because if they're going to sit and listen to a lecture, they're going to get bored.
They're going to switch off.
Definitely.
Okay, finally, we've almost come to the end of the show. Let's talk about the issue around, we're all humans and we all have our disagreements with people. And of course, we're fasting, tempers are a little, short, and we will kind of fly off the handle. What do we tell children and how do we get the concept across to them about Ramadan is the month of mercy and forgiveness, alhamdulillah. So how do we get that concept across to them?
Allah is love. And Allah loves those who love others. So you would look at that and say, Allah loves you and you love others, don't you? So instill with them, especially when they get so angry, follow the sunnah. And I think this is something so important. We need to teach them, okay, if you're angry, okay, now we can't drink water, but what are we supposed to do? Move away from that which makes us angry, go lie down, make 2 rakats of salah, those kind of things. Instill it within them so that they know that they're supposed to keep quiet when they get angry firstly, because you can't retaliate. And the concept that not just the sin, the rewards get multiplied, but the sins get multiplied as well. So the fear that they're going to get 70 sin for one sin that they commit, it really frightens the younger child, where I wouldn't want to be cursing and I wouldn't want to be swearing and I wouldn't want to be doing anything to anger Allah. Or fighting for that matter, because now they know. It's going to be worse. And then bring about the hadith, Sibabul Muslimi fusuq, qitaluhu kufr. Abusing a Muslim is sinful and fighting with him is tantamount to kufr. But put it into action, because if they see you doing it, they're going to think it's okay. So we need to watch ourselves first. Like that role model is so important. But teach them Allah is love. And even though that brother of yours or that sister of yours is driving you up the wall, love them for Allah's pleasure. And in your mind say, oh Allah, make it easy for me. And I always internalize it and I say, what would I want to be told if somebody angers me? And you want to be told that it's okay. You want to be told that you can deal with this maybe at a later stage, but do it diplomatically. So afterwards, once you've cooled down, go back to the person and say, you've hurt my feelings. Even at that level, they must be able to express themselves to say, I'm not happy with what you said right now. You called me this and it hurt me. So they can express themselves and sort out problems and resolve issues, even in the month of Ramadan, but in a beautiful way where their love is there. And even though you did all of that and you hurt my feelings, I still love you for the pleasure of Allah.
Alhamdulillah. And your final message to all the children watching us this morning, and the moms, of course.
Yes, my message for them is to be able to utilize this month of mercy in a way in which is completely different. Make Ramadan exciting, move away from our old traditions and start something new. Instead of having, these really boring iftars, make it exciting, do something on the floor, make it like a Bedouin tent. make it exciting for the kids, because that's the most important, and make them love it. Take them to places whereby they are going to see what life is like for those who do not have, and make them give of their own. So I'll let them unpack their cupboards, take their old clothes and their old toys and give it to the kids who are in need. And inshallah, with that, they can understand that this month is a month of giving of themselves, not just of their wealth, but of their time and their effort, inshallah.
And to give of your love as well.
Oh, definitely. Of course, our love.
Shukran for being with us.
Afwan.
That was Mishuda Japi talking to us about making a Ramadan special for children, the most special people in our lives. It is the first day of Ramadan, alhamdulillah. We do hope that it's going well for you. It's pretty early, but inshallah it's going to be a great day and a great month. Let's take an ad break. Welcome back. We now have Shanaz Bulbulia with us. She comes from a journalistic background, a very strong journalistic background. She's going to talk to us today about journalism and writing for Muslim women, and I do know that that's going to be very interesting indeed as we unpack all of that. So do stay with us, and we do hope you will become a part of the conversation. Shanaz Bulbulia, assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam, Julie, and thank you for having me here. Ramadan Mubarak to you and to your viewers.
And you as well, inshallah. May this truly be the month of love, mercy, forgiveness and emancipation.
Ameen.
And that being said, we do know that the spotlight has been on abuse of women all around the world, horrific incidents in South Africa as well. I'm wondering, from a journalistic point of view, how does one cover that, but also deal with those situations, because it must affect you as a journalist?
Okay, so let's talk to how does one cover it. I think that the issue around domestic violence and gender issues has never really been put on the table, and now is the time. It should have been done a long time ago, and I think that what has happened over a period of time is that it's a taboo subject. It's uncomfortable. It's an inconvenient truth. And what I know that it's the kind of stories that need to be told. They're untold stories. And you need to hear it from the woman's voice, from the person that has been affected by it. You need to know it from, the story needs to be told from people around the women. And it's important to tell that story. So I think that in terms of Muslim women, for example, I did write a story several years ago on elderly women in our community that have survived challenges that are unimaginable. They're pensioners and have been abused, were left to die, and have survived that at a time when it was difficult for them to tell the truth, to talk to their own truths. So yeah.
I want to come back to you in your background. We'll do that in a minute,
Okay.
but I'm on a roll here now.
Okay.
Has that narrative changed? You talk about writing, telling women's stories, women from the community, how they've been abused, elderly women. Has that narrative changed? And by telling the stories, will it and does it make a difference?
I think that it is more easier now to be able to talk to those truths. It's still challenging, but it was much more easier now than, say, perhaps 30 years ago, where gender-based violence was totally taboo to talk about, or women themselves were uncomfortable about talking about being abused and understanding the nature of abuse. I think that when you're talking to women wanting to why do you have to do it? You have to do it because we want to have a society in which we can live and choose our own lives. And I don't think Allah said we put women on earth to be abused.
True.
We need to tell our children, both our male and our female children, how to conduct relations with each other. So these untold stories are important because they change the discourse of conversation. Suddenly they bring the inconvenient truths to the surface and allows us to talk to it. It could be women. It could be about poverty. It could be, there's a whole range of stories that need to be told. And the reason why they need to be told is that it allows us to understand a diverse world, a global world. We challenge our own assumptions about people. We tell stories that we don't know. I love doing this with my students. I kind of say to them, take your hand and put it up to your eye and frame your eye, because we all see the world from a particular lens.
True.
And we need to see it from different lenses so that we can see the world as being diverse, and we see lives and truths from different people because we have different voices. And really, that's what journalism is about. We need to have different views, complementary and competing views. We need to test our own views all of the time as individuals. In that way, I think...
And it's not wrong, it's different. It's not... Your view may be different to my view,
Absolutely.
but it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It's
No,
just
it's not.
different.
Totally, Julie. I mean, like, you may come from a particular area, a particular country, a particular religion, a particular social class, a particular value system, a particular culture. It may be different, but there isn't a wrong or right. And I think when we treat the world in such polar opposites, either right or wrong, we tend to judge, assume, stereotype, discriminate in the most negative of senses. So, yeah, I think for me, telling untold stories is not new. I think when I started journalism, it was to tell the stories of what it was to live under apartheid.
And now you started many years ago. Obviously,
Yes.
you're one of the pioneers in our community. How difficult was it to find your space in the world of journalism?
I'll tell you, okay, I started about 30 years ago, and I cut my teeth in journalism at what is now known as independent newspapers, but at that point it was at the Star. So it was difficult in the sense of you're a black person. You must remember that was apartheid. So the stories that were told there were around inequalities. We were also during like the state of emergencies, etc. So at that point you're talking to, for me, the untold stories was what it was to live under apartheid, what was it for activists, what were they up against, the violence, the death in detentions, all of that was the kind of stories I started concentrating on at that point. When it comes to come as a woman, I've seen myself as a black woman. I must tell you, I say shukr. I think ITV does a wonderful job about being able to have a voice for a community. I must say shukr. Our community embraced the idea that I don't think they even questioned there's a woman journalist. I never came across that, I must tell you. So that was liberating.
Perhaps you were our voice. We needed a voice out there in the community.
I think, yes, I think you may be on something. I think you do, you require, and you're right. And that's really what Untold, so it comes back to the question of untold stories about voiceless people, or people that don't have platforms to be able to tell their stories. So whether you're an abused woman, or whether you're poverty-stricken, or whether you are semi-literate or illiterate, don't have access to be able to tell your stories, tell your truths, tell your life experiences, what you're living in, the conditions you live under, the context you're living in. That's what we did in apartheid days. That's the voice you're talking about. I think now so that voice needs to be strengthened completely. Because we're also living in a globalized world where we have singular voices, and we need to be able to tell those stories of people that don't have access to platforms to be able to talk to their realities. And that when we cover, so coming back is kind of a circle. And I think when you asked me to come on your show, I reflected back and thought, oh my God, this is a circle.
Yes.
And what's been constant in my life was to be able to pursue this position of telling untold stories. So I ended up telling them. I ended up training
and that is what you're currently doing, training journalists
I train, well, it's quite a broad audience. So I train journalists. I train journalists in South Africa. I train journalists on the continent. I train also community activists. I train in the unions as well.
So what do you train them? To tell their stories? How to
Yes.
write and tell their stories?
Well, yes, I kind of specialize in untold stories.
Okay.
So for example, on the continent, and I think I have forwarded you some pictures about some of the places that I've been to. So I go into conflict zones, and then I train journalists there about how to tell stories in conflict, because it's much more complex. And this idea of rumors spreading, not knowing what truths, lots of issues. It becomes very sexy to tell in conflict zones just the event, the statistics. It doesn't have a human face anymore.
Now, you've touched on quite a few issues there. Do they pertain only to conflict zones, simply because you're in a very hostile environment? How do you verify the information that's coming through, your sources, and then obviously you're putting your own life at risk? So what does that training entail? And are journalists actually putting their lives on the line in such hostile environments? Are they prepared to go that route?
I think that the journalists that are telling conflict stories and stories on conflict are putting their lives on the line. I think that is their passion. It's great and courageous, but
otherwise we'd never get those stories.
We'd never get those stories. But the stories that are told are not just about how many people die. And it's, war is there's a circular spiral effect from war and destruction of environment, destruction of your land, your resources, people. You have poverty. It's kind of a vicious cycle. It goes right back. So you have this, to get out of war and to get out of that scenario. I mean, you constantly have this conflict, the struggle, and the struggle for resources. So when I train on the continent, I actually hear the stories of other reporters and journalists of how difficult it is to train on the continent. Especially in conflict zones, and we work through strategically how to be able to tell the stories, how to be fair, accurate, and balanced in your reporting. That is true whether you're in conflict zones or whether it's here. It doesn't make a difference. So for me, the very strong point that we kind of keep coming back to is to get multiple sources in your story. Fact-finding is critical. Checking facts, double check, triple check, see your sources need to be reliable. You don't know who they are. You need to go and check out on your sources, be questioning whose agenda, whose voice, what is your agenda, what do you get out of it. So there's a hell of a lot of that takes place in reportage, generally, more so in conflict zones. And I think that also what happens is that we've discovered, I think there's a lot of things that you assume about how truths, or there's multiple truths. Journalism is really, when you're doing a story, it's a window in a moment. You don't have all of the truths at hand. You just have that little glimpse of the world. And so if you want to see that world, you need to see the world and understand you're only taking a picture of that moment. The truths before, so you need to go and do research and history to understand that context. There will be truths come after. There will be truths that test the things that you actually report on. So it's not just, you kind of have to go up and down, run up and down, make sense of your reportage all of the time. You need to come back to it 5 years from now to see what had happened. Because a lot of things that unfolded at that moment is only the truth at that moment. 2 weeks from now, something else reveals itself. The story changes.
Because different things has happened.
Exactly.
And different players have come into that space.
Absolutely. Or there's a different light that's being shed on a story. So I think we're in an age in which we need to be extremely vigilant globally about singular voices that dominate the stage. I think that, I think about, the elections of Trump, for example.
Can we hold that thought? Let's take an ad break. I'm talking to Shahnaz Bulbulia. She comes from a journalistic background. Currently, she trains all around wouldn't say the world, but all around the African continent. And she trains journalists very especially in conflict zones. And that's what we're unpacking on the show this morning. But we're going to take an ad break now. When we get back, we'll continue the discussion. Do stay with us. We're talking to Shahnaz Bulbulia. She's a journalist. She started a career way back 30 years ago, so she says. Currently, she's training, and she trains journalists in hostile environments as well. And it just goes to show we take things very much at face value, but there's a story behind the story, and the day in the life of a journalist is not easy or glamorous as we've thought it might be. Shahnaz, coming back to you and the life of a journalist, what happens when the journalist puts out the story? Because you say it's a moment through, it's a moment in time. They capture that story, assume that they've got all the facts. They may have been misinformed, and the story goes out. Is there any way for them to redeem themselves or to correct that story? Or correct the facts of the story? Let's assume they work for a large newspaper, a large tabloid, or even TV reporters.
Okay, so I think let's tackle it at two levels, Julie. The one is that it is imperative that you report and you do your research prior to your reportage. And if you have that advantage, and most of the time we do, so the idea about reportage is that before you write, before you actually tell the story, before you use the platform to tell the story, there's a lot that goes into thinking through your story before you do it. Yeah. So one of it is to be able to check your facts, check your sources, check your sources, track records.
And of course you do, before the story hits the streets or the tabloids, your editor obviously is going to support you and go through the story.
Okay, so the reportage process is one where the idea takes place. And then you go about gathering information, you make sense of that information. Part of that process of gathering that information is where you start doing your fact-checking, your source checking, etc. So that takes place very much about before you bake the cake, you go and figure out what cake you want to do and you get your ingredients, etc. So you're doing all of that. That process before you actually tell the story is critical.
Has to be in place.
That has to be in place. That's where you use your critical analysis tools. That's the point where you actually check your facts, you check your sources, you find out what is it, what information do you have, what is it, what don't you have, where are you going to get that information. On complex stories and stories in which there's always like a he said, she said scenario, what you're doing at that point is you are making certain that you get other voices on that story. It's not good enough just to have one source as bad reportage, because that one source is only going to give that one story. I read as an example, I read a story in a popular newspaper about a minister talking to his text to an employee. That story, for me, should have had more sources on it, not just a source or sources that had the same view.
So that's sensationalism.
No, I'm
to
not.
A point?
Julie, if you and I have to have the same view, we're two sources, aren't we? But we have the same view on the same subject. That means that it's just one voice still. You need someone else with a different view, a dissenting view, a competing view, something that will test us. That is what you require in your story, so that that story can be richer, has more texture, and has different views. Now you are doing your readers, your viewers, your listeners a service, because they are able to make sense from all the information they can get. They can't be fed the same thing. And I think I was talking to you about Trump, the elections. Big mistake. What had happened there, and I think journalists had to be critical about their own role in being able to just talk to one voice. So nobody expected Trump to win. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think it was the Washington Post as well as Newsweek. Newsweek actually had a picture of Clinton, Hillary Clinton, calling her president, our president. And then when Trump came in, they had to take it off. They didn't expect. Everybody was kind of surprised about Trump's victory.
Was I.
As was you.
Yes, absolutely. Let's just go back to the conflict situations, your war zones, etc. You often find in reporting, you are told that 10,000 people or 5,000 people have been killed and 3,000 are injured, critically injured in hospital. How in that conflict situation, it is so muddled and so chaotic, how do they come up with those type of figures?
Well, I think that there are several organizations on the ground, right? So there are organizations like the ICRC, and I've worked with the ICRC. There's
they being ICRC
the International
being
Crisis Committee for the Red Cross, right? Okay. So they work in conflict zones, unlike the Red Cross that is chapter based and looks at issues around natural disaster. The ICRC looks exclusively at conflict. So I've done training with journos under the auspices of the ICRC. I'm not an ICRC spokesperson, please. I just go and do training for journalists there. So you have organizations like ICRC. We have organizations like Islamic Relief. We have organizations like Gift of the Givers. So there's several different organizations, UNICEF. You have the official voice as well, and you have ordinary people.
To verify the numbers.
Absolutely. Well, you have doctors. So it's not just a number game. It's about how people are impacted on, affected in those areas, how they survive, civilians survive, etc. So you do need to go to gather your information, look at all the different sources, and you kind of see what happens, where people are getting the information from, even your sources. So whether you're a credible organization, you still need to find out where did they get the source from, and a lot of, for example, maybe one of the organizations said that we're on the ground, and this is what we are reporting, this is what we're seeing, this is the body count we've done. This is not anybody else's body count, and I know some of the organizations are very, very strict about it. So when it comes to that, yes, you will take this, and then you kind of look at if the numbers are so contrasting, then your duty as a reporter is to be able to indicate that, because you need to be able to indicate that there's a difference of opinion on a particular matter.
And I should imagine there's a margin for error on either way.
There's always a margin of
All right,
error.
Let's look at the journalists in conflict zones. Obviously, they are at risk of possibly getting injured or killed. And I know you train them on the how to and the questioning, etc., how to write a story. But what about their safety issues?
So
it's not guaranteed, is it?
No. I mean, journalists are citizens.
It can never be guaranteed.
Journalists are citizens.
Of course.
You don't get protected. Yes, you have embedded journalists, but that raises the whole ethical issue about whose story are you now telling and whose story are you now spinning. So if you want to be an independent journalist, it's obviously much more challenging, because you're not going with the protection of the police or the protection of whichever regime is in place. So what part of the training is to be able to have the conversation around how does one protect yourself in unsafe zones. Now we're talking about conflict, but it could be right here in South Africa. I mean,
true.
We have massive protests taking place as well.
Lots of conflict situations.
Lots of conflict situations as well. So, I mean, the discussion then obviously is to take cues to have the conversation with journalists, and we have some guidelines about how to brief and debrief in the newsroom, how to make certain that your editor or your trusted people know exactly where you are. So there are certain steps that you take. You take steps around just physical things, like you make certain you wear your running shoes or your techies or your sneakers. You take water with you. So there's certain things that you have to do on the day. Being informed and making certain that your employer or your news organization is aware of your whereabouts, having code words. So there's quite a few guidelines that are provided by, not just in the training, but also there are organizations like Reporters Without Borders, the Community to Protect Journalists, CPJ. There's lots of organizations that give really great guidelines to be able to go out into an environment and report it, hopefully from some degree of safety. I think women journalists have, I love the idea when I train, and women journalists will talk about how they go about training, what kind of safety factors they have to be mindful, including sexual harassment with colleagues as well. So we talk to a whole range of areas.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes time to wrap up the interview. And I know close to your heart are untold stories. You touched on the one. There are 2 others that have been published in the Women's News, I think, a local magazine. Talk to us about those and why were they so special and so close to your heart?
Okay, so I'm going to just come back just briefly. I started by saying that I've always wanted to tell untold stories, and I see my life very much like that. So from the time 30 years back, many moons back, I started doing just untold stories, then started training in untold stories on the continent, because we're not only looking at conflict, we're looking at stories that happen maybe 5 years after the conflict. They are still untold stories, because most news just cover the moment of war, when the event is big, but then they don't cover the rest. Right now, I mean, so if you're looking at untold stories, you can, when I come here, I tell the story here about the elderly women, what it is to live alone, to survive alone, to live on a meager pension, to have lived through brutality in the home. That was one story. The other story that I looked at as an example was an inconvenient truth. It was a gentleman whose dad or grandfather had come in as an indentured laborer, was treated like a slave by members of our own community. So he didn't come, and he wasn't a white colonialist. I mean, this is members in our own community that hired slaves. So those are inconvenient truths, and it was his story about his grandfather. And it's not the stories that you hear, but untold stories allow you to capture that history and to record it. And it's a truth that we have to look at, that we don't always see. Then the other story, I mean, there are several stories, but the other one I looked at, and inshallah I'm going to be doing some more work on it, was the story of Yusuf Talia. So again, I mean,
May Allah grant him Jannah, inshallah.
Ameen. So I'm going to declare up front that Yusuf's mum and myself are actually first cousins.
Right. We're friends, by the way.
Oh, lovely, Fatima.
Small world.
Small world.
Okay.
Okay. So Yusuf's story was told about Yusuf from Yusuf. And I approached her because I just thought it was so courageous of her to deal with this, with Yusuf's development.
His illness.
His illness.
Are you going to write a story about...
I did.
Oh, you've written the story
I wrote
already.
the story at that time. This was like about several years ago that I wrote the story from the mother's perspective, from what it was between the mother, the father, and the family to actually
and her
develop
relationship, because she was his prime
yeah.
caregiver. Is that going to be a book, and when can we expect it to hit the shelves?
Oh, she's going to kill me for this. Okay, so we're talking. She and I are talking about it, yes, inshallah. So I'm not going to tell you too much because I don't think I have.
And I hope it's going to be
inshallah,
entitled Yusuf's Story. If you haven't found the title yet, number
will
one.
cut you.
And all your other untold stories, Shanaz, are you planning on perhaps publishing that into one book? It sounds like a great idea.
Well, now you've given me more work. But yes, I think that, okay, yeah, this is where I want to go with it. So I'm going to tell you, I just think that there are many stories to be told on the continent. So I'm working on a project right now that I would like to be able to talk to, and I'm talking to a couple of stakeholders so that I can tell and go out, train, as well as tell untold stories using multimedia on the continent. And it doesn't have to be in conflict zones. It could be anyone's story that is necessary to capture and record so we can learn from it, that will test stereotypes. I don't know what those stories are, but there are many stories out there from women that have been abused, yeah, to women, to women, to children, to slave, to children. I mean, in conflict zones, I actually met quite a few child soldiers as well. So there's lots of stories to tell. There are those stories that of innovation. There's stories that where people have innovated around how to put food on their table, how to look after a family.
Stories of survival.
Stories of survival. We have a lot of orphan children. We have a lot of children being parents as well. Their stories need to be told. We need to know stories about people that are protesting.
Let's assume you tell all those stories, you publish a book, or in whatever form or shape you're going to put those stories out. Do you think that it will make a difference?
Yes. Because, I mean, people read, people learn. The conversations that were difficult maybe 30 years ago, like saying I'm in an abused home, are now much more comfortable. People will tell their stories, and they do need to be told. They need to be told so that we don't go out and hurt and harm more. So, I think that they do make a difference, and they're part of our histories. Being a Muslim woman in this age, dealing with Islamophobia, there are stories to be told. We can't put them push them under the carpet. They need to be told. Those women that are taking on those challenges, those men that are taking on the challenges, the children that are taking on the challenges where they are being abused or where they've been marginalized need to be told. The stories of the Palestinian political prisoners on hunger strike need to be told. I think we now, in the 39th day. We don't need to be told just the number of people. We actually need to go and see what it is to live in a prison where the rights are totally violated. And those stories need to be told. We need to be tracking them.
Your message to aspiring journalists the world over?
We need you. We need journalists. We need journalists that are critical. We need journalists that go out, tell the stories, ensure that their agenda is people's agenda, it must make a difference in the lives of people. I think there are many journalists out there that they go through a lot of harm, a lot of ridicule, a lot of taboo. They also celebrate at the same time. So I think, inshallah, we have people that will continue to play that role so that we can be touched and connect and converse at a global and local level with people across the world and know other people's lives. I think we're born to make a difference.
And if we didn't have journalists, we'd never hear all of the stories. Thank you indeed for being with us. It's been fascinating to take a peek into the life of a journalist. Lovely talking to you.
Thank you.
That was Shanaz Bulbulia talking to us about journalists in conflict zones and telling us about her passion, which is untold stories. So do watch the space. We'll have her in again sometime soon as the book is published, and we'll talk some more. Thank you for being with us on this part of the interview. We're going to take an ad break, and when we get back, we're going to be talking to another journalist and also an author. Her name is Zahira Walker. Do stay with us. And welcome back. We're into the final interview for the morning. Alhamdulillah, the first day of Ramadan. We're very pleased that you're able to join us this morning and that you haven't decided to take a nap right now. We're going to be talking now to Zahira Walker. She's a journalist, from one journalist to the next, but she's also an author, and she's here to talk to us about the 2 books that she has self-published. Zahira, assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam. Thanks for having me.
Lovely to have you here. Now, I know you come from a journalistic background. What's it with journalists? Do they have these amazing stories that have to eventually translate into a book?
I think everyone's got a story to tell. I was just in a more fortunate position as a journalist to work with words.
Right.
So, yeah, I took that opportunity and painted words on canvas, and I've got 2 books.
Did you know as a little girl that this is what you want to do? You know, some people are just at a very early stage of their lives. They know they're passionate about something and they're going to follow that dream and see that dream become a reality. Was that the same for you?
I lost myself in books from a very early age. My first book prize was Goldilocks and the 3 Bears.
Oh, wow.
And I loved reading. It was an escape for me. And I read Enid Blyton, fairy tales, and it was just magic. And I never really thought I'd write books. I always knew I was going to be a reader. But along the way, why not write a book and leave a legacy?
Oh, absolutely. And as they say, books are the theatre of the mind. When you read,
Yes.
you're really getting your imagination to work and to work overtime and to take you to places you never ever dreamed possible.
Correct.
And so we come to your 2 books. Which one came first and what was the motivation behind the books? They 2, the one is called Beautiful Chaos and the other one's called Deadline.
Correct. I wrote, Deadline was my debut novel, set in Durban. That talks about, a little bit about my journalism background, some of the experiences, the beats that you get to cover. Court and crime is quite prominent in there. And it wasn't just about journalism and you know, the stories I chase, but it was more about giving hope and dreams to young men and women to follow their dreams no matter what. Sometimes you have visions and goals, but you get obstacles placed in your path. But if your faith is constant and you know that's what you really want, there's ways and means to get to it. So that's my message in Deadline for everybody.
Oh, marvellous. As a writer, I often ask authors this question: how much of you is in the book, even though it's a work of fiction? And how much do you depend on characters that have crossed your life and possibly experiences in your own life?
I knew that question was coming up. Okay, both the books stemmed from experiences I've had in my life. Deadline, I was a journalist. About 15% is about me in the book. The names have been changed. But certain stories, certain elements that happened, like the serial killer, yes, that did happen. There were court cases. So through that, it's like your memory bank. You draw from it. And you use it to create magic on the page, to give a message to people. Going on to the second book, Beautiful Chaos, that's close to my heart. It took me 5 weeks to write the book.
Wow!
I'm actually proud of myself as well.
That's wonderful.
I was in a very good part of life, a good thinking space. And romance, I mean, everybody loves romance, but romance has changed. This is a contemporary romance. It touches on experiences we hear about or go through, and a lot of the things written in that book are things that people can relate to. So about me in the book, I would say 20%.
You say that with a very cryptic smile. You also made a comment that romance has changed.
Yes.
What are you saying?
It's, you know, Shakespeare romance, reading it today, how can you really relate to it? Because we don't know the places and the language has changed. Romance today, there's different types of romance. You get your dark romance, you get your contemporary romance.
Explain dark and contemporary.
Dark. Dark has to do with romance that most people will be afraid to talk about and pick up. It involves a lot of adult scenes and conversations. It's
Exploitation, possibly.
exactly, yes. And look, we all know about it. We all talk about it, but not publicly. So it's now being captured in books, and there's a huge market for it. And a lot of the women are coming out of the closet and reading these books and exploring things that they could never really talk about. So yeah, that's contemporary romance, dark romance. Contemporary romance are modern day issues that we can relate to, relationships across the cultural lines, the racial lines, and elements of meher and, death. How do we handle it? The different
Elements
cultures.
of meher, why have you touched on that? Why
I've
has that come up? Does it
Meher
come up in the book?
It's in the book.
Okay.
It's in the book. And I also, it's not just written for the South African community. And there's a glossary at the end of the book. So people, whether you are in California or Italy, you can relate to things because we call it meher. Some people call it the dowry. There's different,
The African culture would relate to it as lobola.
Yes. There's different ways to call it and refer to it, but it's all the same. And I think I captured that pretty well in the
So tell us more about the book. Beautiful Chaos seems to be something very close to your heart. When you spoke about it, I see you smiling throughout the discussion. So it is very, very meaningful and important to you. It probably still is, and you wrote it in a time when you were in a very good space, I gather.
Yes. It starts off with social media. Everyone's quite big on social media. We,
It's changed the world.
It's changed the
It's
world.
revolutionized the world.
Yes. Relationships, how do they start before? Boy meets girl, boy introduced to girl through family members.
The Samusa run.
Exactly. Exactly. But so many people are meeting potential partners on social media. And I wanted to use that in the book. And truth be told, I found a friend on Facebook, and that expanded into this book. You have this ideal romance, what you visualize the ideal man will be, and all of those elements I got from this friendship. We're still good friends, and I admire him for so many things. He helped to encourage the book, and without realizing it, it gave birth to this beautiful story.
When we look at the book, so a lot of there's part of you in both the books, and you've also said to me that you've self-published.
Correct.
What does it mean to self-publish? Financially, does it come at a great cost to the author? Because as you just said earlier on, we all have a book within us, but it's really difficult to get your books published. It really has to be a near top-notch bestseller type of material before a publisher would even look at it.
Correct.
So what's the cost for publishing, and how easy perhaps or difficult is it to self-publish?
Just to go back a bit, my dream was to be published by the big publishing houses. It's called traditional publishing. And when I sent my manuscript off many years ago, I got regret letters. While your story is good, unfortunately, that's not what we're looking for. And so it sat in the back burner. And then I found out about self-publishing. And it was intimidating. If you don't know it, you're going to be scared to venture into uncharted waters. So I found the first book. I found a company that did self-publishing for authors. And I thought I had arrived. And after the book came out and I started speaking to other people, and then they helped me realize that you can actually do it on your own. Mm-hmm. So while Beautiful Chaos is the example I'd like to use. It took me 5 weeks to write the book. I found an editor, reasonably priced package from her, and the book cover was a pre-design. And it was the holiday season, so I got it at a discount, and it worked out perfectly for this
So
particular book.
approximately what did it cost you to self-publish?
Self-publishing, including the prints, cost me 10,000 rands, whereas the other book, Deadline, cost me 54,000 rands.
Sure. I hope you've recouped all your
I'm getting there.
outlay. I do hope and pray that the book sales go well. How are the book sales anyway? And I should imagine they are available at all bookstores at the moment.
They're not available at all the bookstores at this
Most.
stage. They are available in Johannesburg, it's at Scoops, and in Durban, it's at #books. Some libraries in Durban have requested copies of the books, which is a proud moment for me. It is also available on Amazon.
We've almost come to the end of the interview, believe it or not. What would you like to leave our viewers with in this Mubarak month of Ramadan, and also about books and aspiring authors watching us this morning?
Firstly, people should believe in their dreams, because when you believe in your dreams, it's so much easier to reach the end. I think that people should be motivated and inspired, and the element of paying it forward is very important. So while you get all the help, use it to your benefit, but don't forget that there's so many other people out there that you can help. So please step up to it and help them.
Wonderful. Lovely talking to you. We do hope and pray that your books do fly off the shelves, inshallah.
Jazakallah.
And is there another book in the pipeline?
There is another book, but I don't want to rush that. So come 2018, you'll be getting something fabulous.
Wonderful. Go well. May you have a wonderful Ramadan, inshallah. Please do remember us in your du'as. Assalamu alaikum to
Walaikum
you.
salam.
That was Zahira Walker talking to us about her two books, Deadline, and I think the next one's called Beautiful Chaos. Time for us to wrap up. Thank you indeed for being with us on this first day of Ramadan. Inshallah, may it go equally well throughout the month. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us all with deen, iman and taqwa in this month of Ramadan. Our thought of the day is, in this holy month of Ramadan, may you be blessed with good health, inshallah, prosperity, and may Allah's blessing always shine upon you and your family. Ramadan Mubarak, and Khuda Hafiz from me, Julie Alli. Thank you indeed for being with us, and a big thank you, of course, to the production team as well. Till Wednesday morning, as always, as I've said, Khuda Hafiz.
يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا